Muito obrigado, bom dia a todos. Cumprimento os organizadores do evento, na pessoa do Sidney, aqui pela magnífica realização desse evento tão importante, né, que se repete a cada ano, cada vez maior, mais sofisticado, mais complexo, com salas enormes. O nosso tema de hoje, Inteligência Artificial e Governança Algorítmica, Desafios Regulatórios, é um tema que dispensa maiores comentários, porque diariamente a gente lê na mídia comentários sobre a necessidade de regulação da inteligência artificial, sobretudo depois da emergência desses modelos comerciais de inteligência generativa, né, como o ChatGPT, que ocupam a imaginação de todos. A Comissão de Juristas do Senado Federal, que foi instalada em abril do ano passado, para oferecer um substitutivo aos projetos de lei encabeçados ou pela deputada Luísa Canziani, da Câmara, quando criada, enfrentava um ceticismo enorme, a começar pela possibilidade de regular o que não existia, o que não ameaçava direitos. Isso tudo se dissipou muito, como dito, né, com a emergência desses modelos de inteligência artificial generativa que acabaram por criar quase um clamor pela regulação no mundo, manifestos de participantes, de interessados, e o impacto óbvio que esses modelos podem ter na democracia e nos sistemas políticos é que tem dirigido, sobretudo, esse clamor regulatório. A União Europeia acabou de aprovar um modelo de governança que serviu de forte inspiração para a Comissão de Juristas do Senado desenhar um substitutivo que, no fim, acabou se convertendo no PL 2338, proposto pelo presidente do Senado, o senador Rodrigo Pacheco. Esses são alguns dos tópicos a serem tratados aqui hoje, e, sem mais delongas, eu então começo pelo professor Steffen Augsberg. Com a palavra, por favor. Eu peço aos palestrantes que falem por 15 minutos.
Muito obrigado pelo convite. Eu já há quase 10 anos, desde que fui convidado para vir à Universidade do Minho para aquilo que se chama uma conferência internacional. Eu era o único orador não lusófono e resolvi aprender português urgentemente. Até porque eu e a minha família gostamos muito da Virsa, mas infelizmente não a conseguir fazer até hoje. Por isso termino aqui esta triste tentativa. And I am so sorry that I butchered your language as I did there. But you can rest assured in the knowledge that there is no one in the room that is more sorry of not being able to speak proper Portuguese than I am. And at the same time, I think I have to recognize that it is highly unlikely that in my lifetime I will be able to learn it, to speak it properly, or at the very least, by the time that I should be able to do so, there will be an in-ear DeepL that is so much better than anything that I can do, and that's why we're here and what we will be talking about. So, I am a public law professor from Germany, but I am also a member of the German Ethics Council. And it is with regard to that position that I would center my remarks today around, because within the German Ethics Council, we have presented an opinion a couple of months ago on the challenges of artificial intelligence and on the specific challenges that the human-machine interaction poses to our society. And interestingly, and characteristically, I think, for our topic, that opinion it came at the very right time and at the very wrong time at the same time. So it came right when the ChatGPT hype started, So the attention amongst the media and then amongst the German populace was very, very much directed towards the idea of artificial intelligence and how it would change our lives. And at the same time, the concept of generative AI isn't at the center of our opinion. So my remarks today will focus on our opinion, what we tried to lay out there, and I just had a look. It is supposed to be translated into English, but it's not there yet. So for today, you just have to believe me, and maybe in the coming weeks, then you might be able to download the English version of that opinion that we gave. And the German Ethics Council, just as a side note, is an institution that is supposed to advise both the German Parliament and the German government on ethical matters. And there's a statutory basis for that, especially with regard to the life sciences. And we figured that AI at least does touch upon the concept of life sciences, but it obviously goes well beyond that, and it's also something that I would like to touch upon today. So this opinion that we wrote, the process normally goes as follows. There's a smaller group of people that are preparing a text, and then the whole Ethics Council, which at the moment consists of 24 people, will discuss it at length, and then we'll maybe find some sort of unified solution for problems that we have identified, and then we'll present it to the public and as well as the government and the parliament, of course. So what we tried to come up with is, firstly, being the Ethics Council, a more in-depth philosophical analysis of what artificial intelligence and natural intelligence means and how we can separate the two. And that meant that we had to take a closer look at concepts such as authorship, concepts of responsibility, concepts of self-determination. What does it mean that we are actually able to make decisions for ourselves, but also decisions that actually, of course, affect others? And to keep that rather large part of the opinion short, we really delved into the matter, or the philosophers on the council did their very best to come up with an in-depth analysis of how we can actually attribute, or whether we can attribute, anthropocentric concepts such as conscience to machines or to artificial intelligence. And the general consensus at the time was that for philosophical reasons, not for technological reasons, for philosophical reasons, the human mind isn't, we are not able to copy it. We can't imagine, can't fathom an artificial intelligence that is so strong that it would actually require to be attributed to these genuinely human attributes, such as being the author of one's own life. And I think that's one aspect that we would actually discuss here, because I do see that, even though that from a philosophical point of view that is convincingly argued in the paper, but there is the idea of mimesis. And if the artificial intelligence is able to mimic human thoughts, human behavior, so well that it's hard or impossible to recognize any differences, then it might be true from a philosophical point of view that actually that is not a conscious decision-making process. But if we can't recognize it, does it make a difference? If you can't see, if we can't understand, if we don't recognize any differences, what does it matter that actually from the philosopher's point of view, that's not a conscious decision? So I think that's a deep question and a complicated question for us, saying, what do we want here? Do we need to have some ontological understanding of human interaction and of human characteristics? Or does it suffice that it at least does look like a human, or it looks like what we have commonly perceived of as a human? So I think that is one of the more interesting aspects of regulating artificial intelligence, that we are faced with the very basic questions of what we actually are. Secondly, another question that has been posed in the process of regulating AI is why and how we have come to accept and take for granted, or take as just impossible to overcome, some human deficiencies. So take the infamous or famous example of the trolley problem, an ancient philosophical problem. And which group of people do we save, or which person do we save? And we have come to understand, with regard to human decision making, that it's just not possible to find a suitable a solution. And then along comes artificial intelligence and the concept of autonomous vehicles, and now we have to solve this old problem. This ancient question has to be answered. I don't think or maybe it's just something that artificial intelligence can't get to grasp with, because we have failed to do so in the last 2,000 years of philosophical thought. So taking these basic insights, we then try to apply them on a number of reference sectors. So we had a look especially at the health sector, at education, at public opinion building, as well as the public administration, and tried to find out which differences and which commonalities exist there. So with regard to health, I think it's probably the area where the benefits of big data and AI are the most obvious. But at the same time, of course, we can see here that there is a general problem developing, something that has been used later on as an overarching scheme to understand what artificial intelligence does with us. So it does make a difference whether we use it in order to supplement human abilities, to be better than we are now, to achieve something that is not possible for humans with their natural abilities alone, or whether we use it in order to substitute human interaction. So what do we lose if we are to integrate artificial intelligence in our life? So the thing that I started with, so my failed ambition to speak proper Portuguese is my own problem, but my laziness might be even more triggered by the fact that I have these electronic digital tools at hand that make it so much easier to translate. So even someone who speaks a foreign language rather well might find it much easier to just enter some sentences or an email or a letter into DeepL, and he or she will get an answer or a solution pretty swiftly. So substitution or supplementation of human abilities. I went out yesterday and my phone was on its last percentages where the battery was almost gone. What do we do in that situation? We have already come to rely so strongly on our digital devices that it's very complicated, it has become very complicated to get back to our analog ways. And it is something that actually I think is most obviously or observable with regard to medical treatments. There are, of course, huge possibilities here, but there are also some very real challenges and problems, because we have to understand, and that is something I think that Domingo is going to talk about with regards to the EU regulation, what kind of control we are striving for. Do we really think that it is necessary and achievable to be in the loop or on the loop as such that we can actually understand what's going on within the artificial intelligence apparatus? Or does it suffice that we are just taking an outcome mechanism and saying, well, at least with regard to, for example, skin cancer, what the artificial intelligence detects is much more correct, or at least in some ways more correct than what normal medical expert doctors can actually say to us. So with regard to medical decision-making, that is of specific importance, whether we will come to a situation that we are losing human abilities, that we are no longer able to understand what is actually going on, that our trust, another important anthropocentric concept, has to be redirected towards not a person, not a human-based system, but a system that is very much relying on human-machine interaction. Secondly, education. I think that's probably the area that we were most skeptical about, whether we could actually introduce AI into the classroom. And there are mechanisms that are actually being implemented as of today, where artificial intelligence is used in order to control the classroom, to understand how the attention shifts or where the most significant lacks of attention are actually located. A bit like your car detecting that you're getting tired and you're closing your eyes and then sounding an alarm. And is that something that we want in the classroom? I'm not too sure. So I think that this kind of control poses a serious problem with regard to our most basic understanding what education is or should be. So an integral part and the developing of an understanding, a conversation between more or less educated kids or adults. And at the same time, we have to recognize that our education system, at least the German education system, I hope it's better in Brazil and in Portugal, I'm not too sure, but our teachers, well, we have too few of them, and we have too many that are not ideally qualified, as it were. So in some cases, relying on artificial intelligence in order to substitute or supplement our teachers might actually be a good idea. But in general, the Ethics Council is rather skeptical with regard to that. The third concept is the public opinion, and we were struggling to call it democracy and said, well, that's maybe too abstract. So we're trying to say how artificial intelligence shapes public opinion. And that, of course, is something that we associate strongly with hate speech and the idea of content control and the specific role that large media or social media corporations play here. And it's something that we of course tend to frown upon. We don't want that. We want an open discussion. We want a discussion within our digital realm that is not infringed on by some digital conglomerates. And at the same time, I think the developments in these last years have shown how complicated things actually are, how difficult it is to distinguish, to differentiate between a content control that is necessary for the public good, so we don't want child pornography, pedophiles connecting over the internet. I think we can all agree on that. But where does it stop? So the one experiment that probably some of you have also done is you can ask ChatGPT to write a poem on Joe Biden, and it will do so. It won't be a very good poem, but it will be a poem that expressly states what a great leader the current president of the United States is. And then you can ask the AI the same question with regard to Joe Biden's predecessor, Donald Trump. And the answer won't be he wasn't a good president. The answer is, I can't do that because I am programmed to refrain from hateful language. And whether or not you think that Donald Trump, or Bolsonaro for that matter, is a good or a terrible, terrible politician, it is interesting to see that you have such a strong divide there. And it's something that has been programmed into the artificial intelligence. The idea being that if you allow this, then you start off with lauding or writing a poem on Donald Trump, and you end up with a lauding out of Hitler or something like that. Whether that is actually true and whether we have taken a step too far, I think, is something that we have to discuss. Not because we are very much, all of us are fans of Donald Trump or Bolsonaro, but just because it all obviously infringes on our process of public opinion building. Last aspect, we also have been talking about the public administration and the question how at least standardized procedures can be taken over by artificial intelligence. And we are well aware of the problems, the inherent biases that might be unavoidable, or at least that must be addressed with regard to these programs. But it's also something that poses, or that within it lies a great realm of possibilities as well. Because especially with regard to less invasive, simpler administrative procedures, there is beauty in standardization. There is quality in standardization. So there can be a common interest there is also speed, of course, in standardization. Well, there might be arguments for that as well. But with that, I'll leave you to it. Thank you so much for your attention, and I'm very, very much looking forward to the panel.